With great power, there must also come great responsibility. This is The Amazing Spider-Man Complete Comic History, Episode 2, Great Responsibility. This includes The Amazing Spider-Man issues number 18 to 38, as well as Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2. This stuff can be bought digitally, or in this book here, the Epic Collection. The first issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 18. Jameson thinks he's won. Spider-Man is a coward, and his papers are selling hotcakes. He is so happy that he was right about Spider-Man the whole time. Of course, the reason why Spider-Man decides not to fight criminals anymore is because he's too busy taking care of his Aunt May. He doesn't want to get into fights in case he gets damaged and no one else can take care of her. The only person that seems to be defending Spider-Man is none other than Peter Parker's biggest bully, Flash Thompson. Flash still thinks that Spider-Man is a great guy and that everyone's wrong about him. But it turns out that Spider-Man's a sellout as he tries to get his image sold on playing cards, but the guy's like, you're a coward, no one wants to buy cards of you has-been. Back at the Jelly Beagle, Betty's crying because she thinks Peter's cheating her because she always cries about him, and Jameson is gloating to his employee. He makes this amazing face, which I love here, while the employees say, I hate that guy, I wish he was miserable again because I can't stand him when he's happy. For some reason, even though he doesn't really do anything that bad to them, other than smiling all the time. But whatever, his employees just hate him more than Spider-Man hates him. So Peter tries to see Betty, but Betty's like, I don't want to see you, and he's like, I just don't understand women. Though Spider-Man gets another great idea to make money, and that is to sell his webbing. He invented it himself, so might as well see if anyone will buy it. So these two guys are like, wow, that's amazing. But there's a problem, you see, the webbing after a while dissolves. Well, he does that so he doesn't want his web, of course, sticking everywhere. You know, he swings around New York a lot, he doesn't want a bunch of webbing sticking around there, does he? But these guys are like, oh, that's terrible, I don't want that crap anymore. Say it, Spider-Man, you wasted our time. If you couldn't tell, these guys are complete idiots and decide not to buy a very useful invention that could have been made differently to make it last longer, as Spider-Man says himself, but whatever, these guys are just a bunch of dumbasses. We got Fat Man and Bald Man. You think that's bad? The same man who broke out of jail, off screen of course, or off page I should say, decides to fight Spider-Man because, he doesn't like Spider-Man, he defeated him very badly last time we saw them. Instead of fighting the same man, Spider-Man runs away because he doesn't want to get hurt in case he gets badly injured and he can't take care of Aunt May anymore. So he hides behind a bunch of trash and wood planks like a pussy and pretends that he's not Spider-Man in front of the Sandman. The Human Torch is like, Spider-Man can't be a coward, I fought with him, he can't be that bad. He tells Spider-Man to come to the Statue of Liberty, but he doesn't, and he cries, like, I wish Spider-Man wasn't a bad guy. I mean, why do you care, Torch? Go back with the Fantastic Four. Meanwhile, Flash Thompson thinks it's a good idea to dress up as Spider-Man. Why? Well, he thinks that, A, he can prove Spider-Man's a great guy at beating up criminals, or B, Spider-Man can save him from getting beat up for criminals. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go very well. Spider-Man does not show up, and he just gets beaten up by a bunch of criminals instead. But luckily, the cops save him. I guess he got saved. Peter decides maybe he should condole in Flash, since, he did get beat up a lot because he wasn't there to save him. And Flash's like, screw you! And he's like, oh, what a jackass. If things get getting even worse, Peter sees that Betty's found another lover by the name of Ned Leeds. We don't know his name till later. Completely different character from the movie version in the MCU, just to let you guys know that, who knew that version. And he also looks exactly like Peter in this story, because Steve Ditko is not good at drawing other teenage boys, I guess. After all that, Spider-Man decides to throw his costume in the garbage, because after all, it wasn't done but gave a lot of pain and misery. But believe it or not, it's Aunt May who gives him the courage to go back out and fight, because she is powering through her sickness and says that it's a good idea to never give up, even when you're old and frail and dying. And Peter's like, yeah, she's right. If she can do it, I can do it. I mean, I have superhuman strength and she has nothing. So watch out, world, because here comes Spider-Man. And that's the end of this issue, and yes, Spider-Man didn't fight a single person the entire issue. The next issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 19. Spider-Man is back and he's fighting down criminals, and they don't expect a single thing. Of course, the news that Spider-Man is no longer a coward reaches Jameson, and his frown turns quickly the other way around. Or should I say, reverse that. Rewind. Also, the Enforcers are back, and they decide to capture the Human Torch with a asbestos whip, I guess. I'm not sure if it is an asbestos whip, but they do say asbestos a lot in these Spider-Man comics. Now keep in mind, asbestos is very dangerous, but I guess at the time, Stanley didn't know any better, so he wrote every character to fight the Human Torch to have asbestos. Am I saying that word right? Asbestos? Whatever. You see, the Sandman's also working with the Enforcers. He's kind of their boss now, because who else they're going to work for? The Enforcers kind of suck by themselves. So Spider-Man quickly finds the Enforcers' hideout and fights them, but then the cops arrive, so the fight is short-lived. Peter is then formally introduced to the guy Ned Leeds, who was in the last issue. He's like, hey, what's going on? Pleasure to meet you, Leeds. It turns out he's a nice guy, and he works for the Daily Bugle, so he sees Betty a lot. Peter's like, whatever, I could still win you over, can't I? Peter also thinks it's a good idea to ask Jameson if you should go after the Enforcers for pictures, but Jameson is so mad that Spider-Man's a good guy again that he slams the door on his face. Also, the Human Torch is stuck in this glass little container that the Enforcers and Sandman put him in, and there's barely any air from his flame, so he cries. Spider-Man captures a criminal down below and tells him, where's the base, Jack? And he's like, oh, I'll tell you. But the guy's like, after Spider-Man swings away, after he tells him, he's like, I gotta warn them. So he does warn them, but all they do is put little sentries around the base. But Spider-Man's like, I could easily avoid these guys. That's not any trouble for me. When Spider-Man tries to free the Human Torch, the Sandman is there for a surprise attack. But Spider-Man, he's fought Sandman 3 times by now, so he knows all his little tricks. And he fights with Sandman and the Enforcers. During the fight, he rolls against the canister and breaks it through so the Human Torch can join the fight. Since the Enforcers aren't that great of villains, and with Human Torch helping Spider-Man, they easily defeat all of them at once. Though the Sandman's getting away. But Spider-Man and Human Torch got stuck in his webbing. What tough luck. Also, these cops actually capture Sandman because he basically gives up. Because his sand is too much of a strain to create, I guess. Wow, Sandman, you really sucked this issue. While Jameson here is worried about his reputation, Peter's like, I got more photos for you, and of course, he buys them. Also, Peter's not fazed at all that Betty's hanging out with Ned Leeds this time, and she seems to be mad because he's supposed to be jealous. But oh well. So after that, we end the issue on a very interesting note when this guy in purple is actually tracking Peter Parker, and we have no idea why. Next issue is issue 20, one of my personal favorites. Because of his spider sense, Peter quickly realizes there's a guy that's following him. He changed from purple to green in one issue. When the man walks away, he decides to go as Spider-Man to see he can track him to see where his informer is from. Meanwhile, Jameson's reading his own newspaper, learning about the articles as his employees write, and it's like, what's this about this guy? He can use chemical mutations to morph animals? Big deal. But he's like, wait, if I can get that guy to build a guy that's powerfuler than Spider-Man, Spider-Man can get out of town. Also, it turns out the guy in the green was working for Jameson the whole time. See, Jameson wants to know how Peter gets those amazing Spider-Man photos, and that's why he had him tracked. But he doesn't care about that. He wants this guy, whose name is Matt Gargan, to come with him for a special business opportunity. Also, Ned Leeds, who is now a blonde character instead of brunette like in the last issue, is going to Europe, so Peter doesn't worry about him being in his way of Betty. Jameson and Matt Gargan go to Dr. Farley Stillwell's laboratory, where he makes amazing innovations with animal subjects, including swimming fish rats and mouse and fish, whatever it is. Basically, this guy is great at bioengineering, and Jameson offers him $10,000, which is a crap ton of money, $100,000 in today's money, to see if he can make a man stronger than Spider-Man. And Stillwell is only interested in using his projects for betterment of the world. He's like, maybe this can be useful, though. And to make it even weirder, he uses Matt Gargan, who is now a shaved head, in order for experiments to work, to do it. And if you don't know anything about him, he also got $10,000. So yes, Jameson spent $200,000 to basically kill Spider-Man. Jameson could have used that money to actually help out the community, but nope, he thinks killing Spider-Man is a better idea. So Stillwell uses a scorpion DNA to infuse Gargan to be as powerful as one and even more strong than Spider-Man, since scorpions, after all, are predators as spiders. He even invents a tail that will be as strong as his fist. So Jameson yells at Spider-Man from his window, like always. They always talk at the window, and Jameson's trying to trick Spider-Man to stay there. And Spider-Man's like, I'm not biting. He swings away, and just like that, bam, the Scorpion attacks. And Scorpion is one of the toughest villains Spider-Man's ever fought. He is a lot stronger, and up close, his tail can grab him as he punches him to death. way tougher than most villains he's ever fought. Not even his useful webbing can stop Scorpion, who easily rips it apart. But meanwhile, Stillwell's like, this stuff is, I should have not done this in the first place, because this stuff is kind of dangerous. It can make someone go insane if a long period of time. So he goes to warn Jameson and Gargan about it. But at the same time, Scorpion has easily defeated Spider-Man in only a couple pages. He is the first real beating. He lost to Dr. Octopus, but that was nothing compared to this. After Scorpion defeated Spider-Man, he realizes that no one else can challenge his power. Spider-Man was defeated so easily by him that nothing else can stop him. So he decides that, you know what, I should control this city. After all, his brain's starting to deteriorate because of the Scorpion serum he was given. So he immediately starts robbing people and beating the crap out of people. Meanwhile, Spider-Man gets up after that big whooping, because Scorpion didn't kill him, he just knocked him out. First time we see Spider-Man's costume rip like this. I mean, his mask had ripped in one issue, but not like this. So Dr. Stillwell arrives and says, you must drink this, it'll help you avert your symptoms. And Scorpion's like, I don't want that crap, I'm the most powerful person alive. Get out of here. But Stillwell doesn't want his legacy to be tarnished by such a guy becoming so evil. So he tries to climb up the building and Scorpion's climbing up. But unfortunately for him, he falls to his death. Yeah, not joking, this guy dies. Off panel. Spider-Man, knowing that he basically has nothing else to do, decides to go after Scorpion. After all, he learned to never go up against faced up tremendous odds. At this point, Scorpion's mind is fully gone, as the serum has fully injected him, making him go truly insane and basically unstoppable. Jameson then cries stuff, realizing that he created a monster worse than Spider-Man, all because of his vanity. And oh yeah, Scorpion defeats Spider-Man again. He gets knocked out. Though hearing a scream for the Daily Bugle, Spider-Man gets his urge back to fight, come back again, because Spider-Man can't be put down anymore. You see, the only other person who knows his true identity now is Jameson, so Scorpion decides, since Stillwell is dead, the other person knows his secret identity, he decides to take out Jameson as well, just so he won't just obviously destroy his reputation. Though Spider-Man comes back at him once again in Daily Bugle, this time ripping off his tail, which was a big advantage he had. And finally, Spider-Man finally defeated someone who was stronger than him in every way, for pure resilience. Though he realizes after the battle, like, oh crap, I've never been beat up this badly, how am I going to explain this to anybody? So he decides to make up excuses by crumpling up his clothes to say that he's gotten a tussle with a football thing or whatever it was. Of course, this leaves Aunt May very concerned about his bruises. But, hey, not the worst thing that could happen. Also, Jameson being the great person he is, and he did evacuate his building when Scorpion was coming, but he still wrote an article about how he is the one who caught Scorpion and how he is a hero. After all, Spider-Man is still a villain, and he will be proved that he is once again a villain, even though, Jameson, at this point, you gotta admit that you did a lot more villainous things than Spider-Man ever did. Sorry to say, Jameson, I don't know where you're coming from at this point. And this issue ends with Spider-Man having to soap his costume because, it was destroyed by Scorpion. The next issue is issue 21. A man named Beetle is let go of prison with his equipment because I guess they decided to go okay to give a criminal back their equipment because after all, it's not against the law. This guy is a villain who fought the Human Torch in Strange Tales, and that's why we don't know anything about him. This issue is basically another advertisement for Strange Tales, an issue that isn't very good because Human Torch stories by himself aren't good. He doesn't work great outside of Fantastic Four, to be honest. The Strange Tales is worth reading for Doctor Strange. But anyway, after studying way too much, he's like, I gotta get this kink on my back, and the best way to do that is be Spider-Man. Spider-Man is once again jealous that the Torch gets all this fame and love, while he is still considered a menace, even after defeating Scorpion and all these other supervillains. The Human Torch is flying about because he wants to see the Beetles anywhere around, but the Beetle's actually trailing after him, little does he know. Also, the Human Torch's girlfriend, whose name is Doris, gets mad at him because he's always flying around showing off his powers, and gives him a challenge to not go to the Human Torch mode in 24 hours. Later, Peter Parker accidentally runs into Doris here, and they actually make a nice little friendship there when he helps her pick up her belongings. And since she forgot her wallet, he brings it back to her, since they're only a couple blocks away. And she decides to use him to make her boyfriend, the Torch, jealous, because that makes sense. So Johnny thinks it's a good idea to confront Peter Parker in person, who he doesn't know is Spider-Man, and say, back off from my girl. And since Betty was the one at that time, she's like, oh, he's cheating on me again! And this makes her run away. And then one of the best drawn Peter Parker faces from Steve Ditko appears, so he gets mad at the Torch and tells him to go screw yourself. And actually, Flash Thompson's watching this and says, that proves that Spider-Man's better than the Torch, and he starts mocking, making fun of the Human Torch. It's actually kind of funny. So once again, his love life is messed up. Maybe stop dating Betty, because, Liz actually likes you. Betty just keeps trying to mess with you by dating other guys and crying all the time. Why do you want to go after her? Anyway, Peter gets mad. He's like, wait, I'm gonna go make fun of the Torch by swinging around his girlfriend, see how he likes. But at the same time, the Beetle attacks, and Spider-Man and Beetle have a nice little tussle outside of the yard, which is an interesting location since we don't see Spider-Man fight villains outside of Queens very often. Also, Doris sees all this fighting and phones the Torch saying, you gotta come over here. But he's like, yeah, you can't make me break off the bet we have. What a liar. And unfortunately for him, he was wrong because the fight breaks out into the house. Also, the Beetle here captures the girl and he flies away. Because Johnny finds webbing in his house, he decides, is it his house? I'm not even sure. He flies around to attack Spider-Man like he always does. And Peter's like, hold it there, hothead, I got a bestest web. Not joking, he says he has a bestest web. And you can't get rid of it. Or something like that, but he turns his heat up or something like that. Basically, Peter explains to Spider-Man that, hey, I didn't kidnap your girlfriend, the Beetle did. There's also a brief moment where we just see Jameson for 2 panels just because, as Stanley writes, that it won't be a Spider-Man issue without seeing him. And we see Aunt May for 1 panel. I thought it was interesting the fact they had to have these 2 characters in every other issue before in this issue because they had no other way to put them in here. So the Torch and the Spider attack the Beetle, who's in an abandoned little construction site, and they fight it out over who gets to beat up the Beetle first. They run into each other, of course, because it's classic banter. And Spider-Man webs up the Beetle, but even though Doris liked him as Peter, she doesn't like him as Spider-Man because no one trusts Spider-Man, even though everyone seems to love the Human Torch. And this makes Peter angsty again as he looks over the city, saying, why can't everyone like me? Why am I always destined for this crap? The next issue is issue 22. The Circus of Crime, who were in a previous issue, are back out of jail, and Spider-Man decides to come to give them a visit, and basically shakes them all up. He takes the Ringmaster's hat and puts a tracker on him and says, better not get into trouble, or I'm going to come back for you guys, you hear? Meanwhile, their whole posse here is like, we don't like the Ringmaster. His plan failed twice in a row. We need a new leader. And so they ditch the Ringmaster for this guy called the Clown. Basically, they beat the crap out of him just because they don't like him anymore. Also, Peter's too busy reading Hank Pym science to figure out what's going on in the rest of the world. Leave in the comments who Hank Pym's true identity is, if you know what it is. Most people should know it, but if you don't, let me know. Also, I guess Betty isn't mad at Peter anymore, and says, let's go to the, I'm sorry for crying all the time, let's go to the art gallery. And he's like, okay. You see, Jameson's hosting an art gallery full of modern art. In case you're wondering, they've been making jokes about modern art since the 1960s, so it's not a new thing for all of those people wondering about it. Turns out the Circus of Crime, which I'm still going to call them that, they have a new name, it doesn't really fit them, so I'm going to call them Circus of Crime still, are going to sneak in the paintings in the back. The Clown does a little show for everybody, and as the other people steal stuff from the back. Also, Jameson's like, hey, don't steal those paintings, and the guy whose name is the Great Gambino, I think, or whatever his name is, he's got an iron head, and he hits him in the head. This actually means that Jameson's out for the count and has to go to the hospital. So look, for once, we're seeing a character that isn't Aunt May in the hospital. This actually makes Spider-Man mad, even though Jameson tried to kill him a couple issues ago. He's like, no one can beat him up except for me. He uses the tracker to see where the Ringmaster is, thinking that he's still in charge. But the Ringmaster has nothing to do with it and tries to talk about his innocence to the police. But the Ringmaster's like, wait, I'm going to double-cross them so they double-cross me. But Spider-Man's like, I'm going to steal your hat before you do that. Basically, he uses his own hat against him to hypnotize him to tell him where the rest of this posse will be at. And he figures that out, and he's like, I'm going to leave you there. So Spider-Man barges in on the Circus of Crime, or the Masters of Menace, or whatever they call themselves. They're circus freaks, so I'm going to call them Circus of Crime. So, there you go. So these guys aren't really that much a match for Spider-Man after all he did defeat them before. Other than Princess Python, because Spider-Man is a gentleman, and he doesn't want to hurt a lady, and she takes a full advantage of the fact that he doesn't want to hit her. Also, Spider-Man's webbing finally dissolves, and the Ringmaster goes back to normal. He decides to go back on his plan, still backstabbing them for backstabbing him. So, with the Series 6, all of the Menaces or Master Menace, whatever they're called, the Circus Freaks, tag team Spider-Man, but it doesn't really work because they're very weak. And the Human Cannibal, I think his name is, Spider-Man goes up to him and knocks him on the head, basically, for beating up Jameson. The Clown decides to ditch the rest of his members, decided to take the blame for himself. After all, the Princess of Python decides to backstab him. And the Ringmaster finally runs out and says, I gotta take the money back for myself since I'm the man. As a police detective here, undercover cop maybe, decides to track him. Also, Princess Python here takes a full advantage of the fact that Spider-Man won't hit her, and decides to try to take off his mask. And he's like, "No, lady, no for that." He also gets to fight her snake, which is a giant python, but Spider-Man ties it up in knots. So the clown tries to sneak away the paintings, while the ringmaster also tries to take away the paintings, but then he gets caught by the police. And Spider-Man decides to say cheese as the circus of crime, or the masters of Menace, are finally put behind bars. Now Jameson's out of the hospital. He's like, "We gotta do another art gallery to get my money back." At the end of the issue, we find that Peter forgot to call his Aunt May, and Aunt May is kind of mad at the fact that he didn't contact her. Should have thought about that earlier, Peter. The next issue is issue 23. The Green Goblin is back, and he wants to take over a mob. Particularly this guy's little gang mob, known as Lucky Lobo. Don't worry about his name, he's not really important. He tells him, "Go away, green guy, wherever you are. I don't know why you're dressed up as a goblin." And the Green Goblin also throws a pumpkin bomb at him and says, "You'll join me, eventually." Spider-Man is having an unusual problem at the time, because his costume isn't dry from when he washed it. So he decides, like, I guess I gotta leave it here to dry. So Peter stops by the Daily Bugle, and he's also sad that Betty got a letter from Ned. He's like, "Man, she's still dating him? Aw, shucks." Even more changes happen in the Bugle as Jameson rehires Frederick Foswell, who used to be the big man. And Jameson claims it's because of his good heart, but he's probably doing it for the money. And Peter doesn't think that he's gone straight, so he's like, "I'm gonna spy him as Spider-Man." So he runs in the alley, about to take off his clothes when he realizes, "Oh crap, I forgot to bring my Spider-Man costume." Meanwhile, the Green Goblin continues his plan by getting some tax fraud from the guy he's trying to manipulate. He's going to give it to the police or somebody, just so they can get exposed, so he can take over their gang. The finances that the Green Goblin stole actually ended up getting into the hands of Frederick Foswell, who has an insider knowledge in the criminal organization. Of course, this makes Jameson happy, since he gets the crime stories firsthand in his paper, which makes him money. Also, Spider-Man's costume's dry now. Yippee! With all that evidence of tax fraud, the police are trying to get rid of the gang, but before Spider-Man can stop them, the Green Goblin does it for him. In fact, the Green Goblin attacks the whole gang entirely, making people think that he's gone good. Has the Green Goblin gone good? No, he hasn't. So Spider-Man, of course, ends up fighting the gangsters. Then he realizes, oh crap, I gotta call Aunt May. You see, Spider-Man has to make sure, or Peter in this case, to make sure that Aunt May knows that he's okay, because last time he got yelled at, so he has to make sure that doesn't happen. Though, he had a lot of time to set up a little trap for these guys, because I don't really feel like fighting them, so let's have a web fall on their heads. Spider-Man, after beating up all those gang members, decides to go after the Goblin, saying, "You're not getting away from me this time, Greenie." But Gobby turns out to be quite slippery, and Spider-Man still can't seem to be able to catch him. But the Green Goblin's plan kind of sucked, because it turns out that the whole gang he wanted to take over was arrested. Him getting too involved was the problem. He's really mad as he wanted to become a gang member host, whatever you call it. A kingpin, if you will. Hint, hint. And Peter goes back to the Bugle for some reason. I'm actually not sure. He's here to investigate Foswell or see Betty. Either way, he doesn't get anything out of Foswell, and Betty gets nothing out of her either. And Jason basically says, "If you have no foes here, get the heck out of my office." And the issue ends with Peter's like, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder if me and Betty can be a thing. Will the Green Goblin ever get caught? And is Foswell still a criminal? Next issue is issue 24. Once again, funds are low at the Parker household, so Spider-Man's like, or Peter in this case, like, I gotta get some new photos to sell to get some money. Of course, there's always crime going on. Like, Peter's like, yeah, we got some criminals to beat up. This will make some good photo money. But he's stopped by a reporter, none other than Foswell, who wants, a new scoop on these criminals here. As Spider-Man decides to crawl away. Peter's like, well, if Foswell's there and I send these pictures to Jameson, he'll put two together, that might be Spider-Man. And I really can't afford that chance even if it does happen. Or doesn't. So Peter wants to talk to Betty, because maybe she'll have some scoop for him to take pictures of. But when he's hiding from Jameson, because he's going to get yelled at again, he finds that Ned Leeds is still writing to her, and he gets really upset. Seeing as it's a slow news day, Jameson after thinking about, man, why does he hate Spider-Man as much as I do? And he's like, wait a second. Instead of me writing stories about how I hate Spider-Man, I'll get other people to say how much they hate Spider-Man, and that'll make me a bunch of buckaroos. So basically, reporters go out and basically say how much they don't like Spider-Man here. And most people are just doing it, mostly because for a chance to get their name in a newspaper. How shallow. There is one person who doesn't want to talk bad about Spider-Man. It's Flash Thompson, who argues with the reporter, saying that Spider-Man is one of the best people ever, and this newspaper is a load of crap. While Flash is too busy fighting reporters, Liz Allen's like, Peter, can you help me study because I'm failing? He's like, yeah, I guess I can. And this makes Flash Thompson mad when he realizes this, because Liz is his girl, not Peter. So the whole city thinks Spider-Man's bad, once again, because of Jameson's reporting. And he finds someone to diagnose his schizophrenia, or whatever he wants to say. Dr. Ludwig Reinhardt's his name, and he's from Europe, very important. And he tells Jameson that he can write an editorial about how Spider-Man is sick in the mind and needs a lot of help based off why he does this stuff. And James is like, wow, this is a great snoozeworthy, I'm putting my paper. Since Peter always self-doubts himself, he actually thinks this guy might have a point. Like, maybe he is doing it just for fame and glory, and maybe a little nut. I mean, you might be a little nuts to go out swinging on Spider-Man, but who knows? So Peter goes out to see if he can find this doc to say, maybe find out what his problem is, or maybe see prove the doc that he is wrong. But as he leaves his house, he notices that Flash Thompson is following him. So he distracts him by throwing a spider signal up in the air, because Flash loves Spider-Man, so he thinks, oh boy, Spider must be around here somewhere. But it turns out, he's not. While swinging through the city, Spider-Man sees some weird sights, like Dr. Octopus coming through a wall wearing brown. That's a bad color in you, Doc. But wait, he wasn't there. And then the Sandman comes out of nowhere. But he wasn't there either. And then the Vulture appears, but he also isn't there. What's going on? So Spider-Man realizes that he's finally gone mad. The only way to see if he's in a mental state or not is to find the doctor and see if he can help his mental stability. But everything doesn't seem to be too good because he sees everything upside down and he gets scared. But luckily the doctor is here to help out. He's like, I can help you, Spider-Man. But Spider-Man still keeps having visions of all the former villains attacking him. But they're not there, actually. Back of the Bugle, it turns out that the doctor, there's some information about him from Foswell, who discovered that there is something wrong with his doctor. And this causes Jameson to run out of his office. Jameson arrives at the house of Dr. Reinhardt, where he is stopped by Flash Thompson. You see, Flash wants to confront Jameson over posting all those bad negativity towards Spider-Man, his idol, while Jameson runs away from the weird teenager. You see, both Jameson and Flash interrupt Spider-Man's therapy session, and this gives him a new awakening. So says, wait a second, this stuff doesn't make any sense. As the doctor runs away, Spider-Man finally comes to his senses and realizes that he really wasn't hallucinating. Turns out it was his old foe, Quentin Beck, Mysterio, causing all these fake illusions for him to think that he's going nuts. Though Jameson gets upset when he realizes that he was about to unmask Spider-Man and that he was partially at fault. But Flash is really happy since he thinks that he helped Spider-Man, his idol. So Spider-Man gets to have a date, well not really a date, but a study date with Liz Allen. Even though it's not really a date to him because he's still hung up over Betty. But she's happy that she finally got to break down Peter a little bit. And that's how the issue ends. The next issue is issue 25. So Peter's been helping Liz Allen study, and this makes her even fond of him even more. Because he has such a nice, brilliant mind. Like always in New York at night, there's always some criminals, but Spider-Man's like, I'm lazy, I'll just signal the cop to arrest them instead of me doing my job, because you know what, I don't feel like doing it. But he does feel like taking pictures to sell to Jameson, because what else is better than getting money? So Peter has to do his least favorite thing in the world now, make so. Because, as he said himself, he needs a second costume in case his other costume's not in use, because, that's not very useful to be Spider-Man without your costume. So Peter shows Jameson his new pics, but Jameson's like, these poses aren't that great. But then Peter has to twist him to make sure he gets money for these pictures. Peter slants these pictures and make it look like Spider-Man was bad, that he couldn't even beat up these criminals because the cops did it for him. And Jameson's like, you're right! At the same time, a guy named Smythe comes in with a little proposition to Jameson. He's invented a way to beat up Spider-Man once and for all. But you see, Jameson isn't interested, mostly because the last time he tried to do something like that, it ended up backfiring really bad. Though, oddly enough, Peter's like, if this thing fights me, that can give me some good pictures, me and get more money. So let me egg on Jameson to see if he'll do it. After convincing, Jameson's like, well, might as well. And it turns out this machine, known as the Spider Slayer, works a little too well as it tangles up Peter. We're supposed to aim for this spider here. But of course, he uses the excuse that it was a spider to try to grab, and it must have miscalculated how big it was. Yep, not because he's Spider-Man. Nope, not at all. Of course, Petey here and little Betty here were getting into a fight because they always get into fights, and Betty's like, you need to stop being mean to Spider-Man. You're sounding like Jameson now. And Peter's like, well, I need money, so sorry. Later, Flash sets up a fight with Peter because he doesn't like the fact that Peter's been with his girlfriend lately. Well, not his girlfriend anymore, they're exes. And Peter's like, yeah, whatever, I'll beat you up easily. But Peter is nervous, not because of Flash, but because of the Spider Slayer, which could be coming after him any minute. And that thing had very hard grip on him, so he doesn't know if he'll even be able to defeat it. And finally, the Spider Slayer is up and running. And not only is it up and running, but it also has the face of Jameson on it. So when Spider-Man just gets a feed, he gets to see his face of his least favorite person in the world. Seeing the Slayer coming after him, Spider-Man runs away. Of course, Flash and his friends try to chase after him for trying to avoid the fight. But he's not actually avoiding them, he's just avoiding the Slayer. So all these teenagers are in the way of the Spider Slayer, and Jameson's yelling at them like, "Get out of the way, I'm trying to get Spider-Man!" With a quick maneuver, Peter's able to get out of the way and dress up as Spider-Man. But the Slayer is so fast that it ends up catching up to Spider-Man right as he's putting his boots on. Spider-Man tries his trusty web on the Spider Slayer, but it ends up just for tossing it all off. Realizing that this thing being a little too hard to fight, he decides the best thing to do is to run away. But the Spider Slayer can really go anywhere that Spider-Man can, so it's kind of a hard chase. Since Spider-Man helped Betty that one time, she's like, I don't want them to defeat Spider-Man, so I'll try to unplug this plug. And Jameson's like, get out of the office there. Meanwhile, Flash, Liz, and Betty are near Peter's house for different reasons. Flash wants to fight Peter, Liz doesn't want him to, and Betty wants to see Peter because of the whole Spider-Man fiasco. Liz and Betty don't like each other because they both want the same man, but they get even more jealous when they find out that this girl named Mary Jane is happening to visit Aunt May, who's also going to come visit Peter later. And it turns out that Mary Jane is hot! And they get really, really jealous. So they run away like crybabies because they don't like the fact there's some other girl in Peter's house. He's not even dating her. Because Stanley doesn't know how to write women. Everyone leaves except for Flash. Like, I gotta prove that I'm better than Peter, even though I'm probably not. Right now, Peter, or Spider-Man, is getting entangled in the Spider Slayer's little web. And this thing is pretty indestructible. The steel rods are so unbeatable. So Smythe and Jameson leave the Spider Slayer where it is to hold on Spider-Man as they find where it's located, just to unmask Spider-Man themselves. Though Spider-Man has his own plan, as he's able to get to the circuit board and rewire it so he can get free. And when they think they found Spider-Man, uh-oh, it's just his costume. Peter got away, but Jameson has his costume. Also, after a police officer says, get the hell away, Flash leaves, so we don't even get to see the follow-up to that. When Peter comes home, he's like, well, I'm glad I made that extra Spider-Man costume, but uh-oh. His Aunt May found the other Spider-Man costume, and he makes up an excuse that he's using it for some party, and she believes it. Whether we believe that she believes it, I don't really know. But that's how this issue ends. The next issue is issue number 26. Peter is now without a Spider-Man costume, since the one Jameson has and the one that Aunt May has, and he can't find the one Aunt May has anywhere in the house, meaning that he cannot be Spider-Man for a while. And also, the Green Goblin's back, and he still wants to be ahead of a mob. This time he's working with a guy named the Crime Master to set things up. This fella named the Crime Master is throwing in notes and bombs and stuff like that on people to let people know that he is taking over the criminal enterprise. He even blows up this dude's car. And for the looks of things, it looks like that this Crime Master might be the Frederick Foswell, who used to be the big man. Peter tries to see if Aunt May can give him his costume back by trying to ask little questions about it, but it doesn't seem to go well for him. So shoot, he's out of luck for finding that Spider-Man costume. So Peter goes back to Daily Bugle to talk to Betty, but they have a fight about a whole Spider-Man fiasco from last issue, and the fact that Peter didn't mention about Mary Jane, who I guess he doesn't know about still. Well, yes, he does know, but he hasn't met her yet. And Jameson immediately points Peter to get out of his office right now. Bust, you're interrupting the daily lives of the Daily Bugle. But before Peter leaves, he thinks that Foswell is still guilty, so he puts a little spider tracker right in the brim of his hat. So since Peter's already kind of angry when Flash Thompson starts to taunt him again, this time he lets his anger get better of himself. And he starts to beat the crap out of them. Well, not too much before he realizes that this gives himself away. And he gets sent to the principal's office, and he might get suspended. Who knows? Well, probably not, because Flash Thompson feels guilty and decides to tell the principal what really happened. Meanwhile, Peter needs a Spider-Man costume, and since he doesn't like making them, he's like, hey, this store has one. And after the guy's like, you should buy a Frankenstein costume instead. Well, Spider-Man's like, no, that's not his name, it's Frankenstein's monster, but whatever. He's like, okay, dude, have your Spider-Man costume. But this costume kind of sucks because it doesn't even fit him, so he has to web it up to himself because, it doesn't really fit that well. One size does not fit all. So Spider-Man tries to investigate Foswell's apartment, but at this very same time, he gets shot up by the guy called the Crime Master. He then attacks the Crime Master, but he has some gas to put in Spider-Man's face. This makes Spider-Man a lot less powerful, and he's able to punch him off the roof. But at the last second, Peter's able to save himself a nice old weapon. Meanwhile, Spider-Man climbs into the Daily Bugle office to see if he can find his costume, and at the same time, he confronts Jameson. After a short conversation, where Jameson's actually being cordial, he realizes that the costume is not here, but at Smythe's house, so he's got to figure out where that guy is, but he has no time for that right now. Spider-Man then goes back to Foswell's place because there might be more evidence there after all. Someone did shoot at him, so it must have been an interesting place to be at. The Green Goblin and the Crime Master have a little fight because Crime Master wants to do this all by himself, but the Goblin wants to work together, so they have a little spat. Goblin decides to fly away. He sees Spider-Man. He's like, "Ha! I can sneak up on him and just make sure he gets knocked out." And yes, he actually succeeds in knocking out Spider-Man with a surprise attack. He tries to pull his mask off, but since Spider-Man had to web his mask to his neck there, he can't pull it off. It's too sticky. So as the Crime Master is ready to reveal his new supreme role of the Gangsters, Goblin's like, "I got a little surprise for you." And the end of the issue. The next issue is issue 27. Some criminals decide to chain him up before he comes conscious, and they also try to pull off his mask still, but it's still stuck. So now Goblin is ready to demask Spider-Man from everybody, but since maybe hey, I can get his mask off now. But Spider-Man wakes up and starts beating crap out of everybody. Those are a little tricky since, he's all chained up, but Spider-Man is pretty powerful, so he can do it. Using his amazing chest muscles, Spider-Man breaks through the chain. And the police got tipped off that there was a thing going on here, so they are also coming to help fight with Spider-Man. In the middle of all this chaos, Spider-Man places a little camera here, hey, I can get some photos here for later. He helps fight with the police officers. But his costume's coming loose again. Shouldn't have bought those store-bought costumes. After defeating most of the criminals, Spider-Man decides that the Crime Master will be easier to catch than Green Goblin, since, he's had a hard time catching him before. Spider-Man chases the Crime Master under the docks, and the Crime Master gets away in the sewer. In order for him not to be followed, the Crime Master spews some of his gas they used earlier. But Spider-Man's like, "Hey, I can make a helmet to stop the gas from making me so drowsy." But it looks like in that time, the Crime Master got away. So Peter is still convinced that Foswell is behind this. He goes back to his place and searches every inch of it, but he hasn't found a single bit of evidence, not even a Crime Master or Green Goblin costume for that matter. So Spider-Man decides to go to the Daily Bugle to confront Foswell and also Jameson, because he's like, "You guys must be Green Goblin and Crime Master for all I know." But at that same time, across the building space, if you will, the Crime Masters are up there trying to shoot at them, but the police stop him just in the nick of time. You see, it turns out that Foswell was not the Crime Master after all, just some other guy who we don't know the name of, actually. And he's been investigating the Crime Master, and he had a bunch of sting operations to help the police get him, and also write stories for the Daily Bugle. Isn't that nice? We don't know who the Crime Master is, but we know he died, because as the bullet from the cops hit him, he's about to reveal the Goblin's true secret identity, but before he can do that, he dies. Also, it turns out that his true identity was a guy named Nick. There you go. That's the Crime Master. But no matter what, he's dead. So since Spider-Man looks like an idiot, he decides to leave with his costume coming undone like always, realizing, well, this kind of sucks. Also, Spider-Man looking ridiculous is trying to find his camera. It turns out some kids had it. And he's like, well, this sucks. Now that his costume's wet, his costume's even worse. He throws that crap on the ground saying, "This thing is a piece of junk." Since Jameson made Spider-Man look like a fool today, when he's looking at his pictures, Peter's like, "You know what? I'm going to sell these pictures to someone else because I'm so sick and tired of Jameson." So he sells it to this guy. This guy is way overexcited and tries to ask him a bunch of questions. And now Peter's like, "You know what? I really don't think I want to sell this picture to this guy because he's going to ask him way too many questions and I don't know how to explain it." While Jameson is gloating to his I guess, co-workers or something like that, it's revealed that the Daily Globe here has got some exclusive photos of the crime that he's describing, making him realize that these must be Peter, and I must be more nice to him, because he'll probably sell these photos to them if I don't get a nice charm on Peter, because I am a charming guy after all. Peter has to do his least favorite thing in the world. So, because, after all, he still can't find a Spider-Man costume. He has an idea where one is. At the same time, it just seems like something he has to do now. Also, he decides to go with Aunt May to the movies, because what's a better idea than that? At the very end, we are revealed that Foswell actually does have a secret identity. A guy named Patch. Great of a name, I know. He has an eye patch, and he's just an informant that he uses to get information to the police. And Jameson. Once again, the unknown man behind the Green Goblin mask is still furious that he failed once again to get criminals, but at least he wasn't caught. Oh, in case you're wondering, the movie was good, apparently. The next issue is issue 28. Back in school, Peter tries to talk to Liz Allen, but she's giving him the cold shoulder. Peter doesn't understand why. Not that it matters, because it's graduation time and class is let out early. So Peter decides to go for an extra little plan. He visits Smythe with his fake Spider-Man costume in a jar of something that's not revealed yet, to see if he can find the Spider-Man costume that he so desperately wants. Unfortunately for him, the Spider Slayer immediately captures him, and he uses an excuse to say that, well, it wasn't trying to capture me, it was trying to capture this jar of spiders I have. It's just creative why he has it, but why would he carry that around other than the fact he's trying to hide his identity? The world may never know. So while Smythe isn't looking, Spider-Man swaps out his actual costume for the fake store-bought costume, as he says, after all, this does belong to me. Meanwhile, a disgruntled employee is fighting with Smythe here over some liquid metal they both developed. Before Peter can help him get involved, the Spider Slayer captures him again. And the guy, whose name is Raxton, who was fighting Smythe over here, gets a little dose of that liquid metal, and it goes into his skin, making him all gold, and just ignores everybody because he doesn't care about anybody but himself. Spider-Man frees himself using his little web to hit a switch, and the Molten Man showcases his road rage as he beats up some cars and goes around town being basically you're a bad guy, you know. Now as Spider-Man, Peter followed Molten Man into his apartment where they have a nice little fight, if you will. The only problem with fighting this guy is that he's made out of metal and he's really hard to hit because it hurts your hand. After all, would you like to punch a steel beam? I don't think so. Not even the trusting webbing can defeat this guy. Spider-Man fights him downstairs, off and on again, as they trade blow for blow. When they're near the basement of this apartment, Spider-Man turns off the light. This gives him an advantage since it uses senses to track where the Molten Man is, and he ties him up in, I guess, steel beams here. Even tied up, the Molten Man is still pretty strong, but he is not that smart. After he gets tied up even more, the police have come to investigate, and Spider-Man's like, yeah, let you guys have him, because I'm gotta go to graduation. Yes, it's Peter Parker's high school graduation, and his Aunt May and her friend are waving and saying, wow, what a nice, young, handsome man he's become. And when they're handing out the diplomas, it turns out that Flash Thompson got a sports degree. Isn't that lucky? But the bigger news is that Peter got a science degree, meaning he doesn't have to pay for college, making him pretty happy since, college is expensive. To make things even better, Jameson from the Daily Bugle is there to talk to the class about how great it is to be up on the stand. After his speech is done, he talks to Peter about how much he likes him and how he should really keep selling photos to him and not some other competitors. After this, Peter decides to talk to Liz for one last time. You see, she's upset because since they're all going to different colleges, she never got a chance to be with Peter, and she realizes that she never really had a chance, and now she's just sad that they are going to leave separate ways, and she has to give up on trying to date with him because she got tired of Flash. And Peter's like, wow, I guess I really should give you a chance instead of fucking with Betty the whole time. But other than that, everything seems to be good as Spider-Man finally graduates high school, and he gets a diploma to do what he's always dreamed of, science. Next issue is Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2. Some random dude named Xandu is watching some bar fight go on. He's like, these two guys will be good pawns. So he hypnotizes the two brutes and says, you'll do my bidding for me, and you won't feel pain, and you guys will punch strong. You see, this guy wants the other half of this enchanted wand, and the other person who has it is none other than Doctor Strange. Now, if you're wondering what does it do with Spider-Man, it has very little to do with Spider-Man, let's be honest. So those two brutes go and find Strange, and he's like, hey, brute, if I multiply, you won't fight me. But then they're like, oh wait, I guess you will fight me. And they beat him up, and he gets knocked out. Pretty easily. So the two brutes take the wand for their master, Xandu. But as they leave the roof, Spider-Man notices them and is like, hey, I gotta stop those guys, they're stealing something. Unlike regular brutes, since these guys don't feel pain, they are hard to take out, so Spider-Man has a tough time fighting them. And Spider-Man actually loses to these brute guys. Wow, lame. But he threw a nice little spider tracker on them so he can find them later. So Xandu here has a new wand, and he can do magical things with it. He can, mess with the dimensions and stuff like that, and it's really dangerous. And now he has to worry about Spider-Man, who's on his tail. And Xandu's like, I'm gonna send you to another dimension so you won't bother me. And Spider-Man's like, well, I'll take your wand then, buddy. And Spider-Man's like, I have no idea where the hell I am and what the hell's even going on right now. And Xandu sent his two brutes after Spider-Man. He's like, I guess I gotta fight you guys and wherever I am. I don't even know what I'm even standing on right now. Also, Doctor Strange finally woke up after getting easily beaten. It's like, I gotta find that wand that I lost, so I'm gonna fly around the city, see if I can find them. And he and Xandu have a nice little magic fight. But Strange turns out to be the Sorcerer Supreme, so, he beats him. Also, Fireman finally goes back to reality for the whole... wherever he was from, now he's back in the real world. And now Xanadu has his wand, he shoots Strange, and Strange's like, oh, I'm beat up again! But Dr. Strange is like, hey, I can help Spider-Man with my astral form, which is being lazy and a coward. With the brutes taken care of, Spider-Man and Strange return to attack Xanadu. With their combined effort, they defeat the Mystic Man. And Strange decides, let's just destroy this wand before it gets even more damage done. Also, turns out this guy used to be a part of the Mystic Arts, and then he stole something, Watum's wand, as it's called, and yeah. And that's all. It doesn't really matter because this is not a Doctor Strange comic, it's a Spider-Man comic. And this guy's mind's wiped anyway by Doctor Strange. It ends with Spider-Man's like, wow, I don't want to be on that guy's bad side, but maybe I'll have an ally in the future. Maybe. Probably not. Much like the last annual, we have a gallery of Spider-Man's most famous foes, this time picking up where the last one left off. We got the Circus of Crime with the Clown, Cannonball, the Great Gambinos, the Ringmaster, and Princess Python. The Scorpion, the Beetle, not confused with Blue Beetle, Jonah's Robot, or the Spider Slayer, as it will be called later, and the Crime Master. And if you couldn't guess, you could skip Amazing Spider-Man Annual 2 and miss nothing. Next issue is issue 29. The Scorpion has escaped from prison. How do you do this? Well, the people are dum-dums, and they thought maybe he'll go more sane if we get him back in his costume. But as soon as they do that, he breaks out, because what else would you expect? At the Daily Bugle, Peter hears some information about a cat burglar. He's like, maybe I get some information on that. I can get some more news photos, because that's all I care about is money, 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 money. Peter also tries to see what Betty's up to, and she seems to be pretty happy. That's because her old boy toy, Ned Leeds, is back from Europe. Of course, Jameson gets really nervous since last time Scorpion almost killed him, and the only person that can stop him is his least favorite person in the world, Spider-Man. So he writes an editorial basically saying, Spider-Man's a wimp and he can't beat Scorpion, so maybe that'll make him defeat Scorpion. At the same time, the police arrive, well, one officer does, and tells Jameson that the Scorpion is after him, and if he needs police protection, it's right here. Jameson tries to lie because he doesn't want people to know his connection to the Scorpion, says he doesn't need any protection, he's just good old and fine. But Peter's already on the lookout for Scorpion. He knows how dangerous Scorpion is from last time, so he's swinging around the city to see if he can find him. However, the Scorpion is already watching Peter. He knows that, well, Spider-Man in this case, he doesn't know his real name. Anyway, he realizes that Jameson's a lot easier target to take out, and he decides that Spider-Man will be his final victory. After all, he stopped him from defeating Jameson last time, so he's too busy looking for him. He can kill Jameson, then he can kill Spider-Man once for all. While swinging through the city, Spider-Man realizes, like, oh crap, I haven't found him. That must mean he's already at the Daily Bugle. He decides to rush over there. And Spider-Man's correct, as Scorpion is right about to take his revenge on Jameson, returning him into a monster. Though, of course, Spider-Man's right there, ready to attack the Scorpion, as they destroy the entirety of the Daily Bugle during their fight. Spider-Man also gets jealous because Ned Leeds gets the whole Betty. He's like, hey, that's my job! The Scorpion decides to leave and the police come, and Spider-Man crawls right after him. Well, it might seem bad for the Daily Bugle. However, since Jameson has insurance, he's actually kind of happy since, hey, I can get new furniture because this stuff I need to get new ones anyway. What a great deal. And on top of that, Jameson has a new story to flip. He has his photographers take pictures of him in the wreckage, making sure to showcase his tough side, showcase that he was able to fight off the Scorpion. What a great guy I am. While the actual hero is fighting the Scorpion on top of a water tower. Now that the fight is in Spider-Man's element, he uses his webs to tie around Scorpion and swing him around the city, learning that it's not good to fight Scorpion one-on-one. However, if he uses some tricks, he can defeat Scorpion, like setting him in the water. See, Spider-Man remembers last time. Maybe he doesn't because it's not mentioned, but in my point of view, he remembers last time that his webs worked pretty well underwater. He's able to easily tie up Scorpion with his webs, a lot more easier than he was out in the open. Though, of course, his costume is all wet. Wah wah. Peter's a little upset since Betty Brant is at the Daily Bugle. He gets to hear Jameson talk about how great he is. Now, he wrote a whole editorial about how great he is, and he says, I don't believe in false modesty, so that's why I had to write stuff about me. And Peter's like, I gotta find where Betty is. It turns out that Betty had a fainting spell because she got so scared of Scorpion and Spider-Man, but Ned Leeds is taking care of her. This makes Peter sad because he wants to be with Betty, even though he's not really good at being with her. Also, suddenly, his aunt has a fainting spell, but she keeps it a secret from her nephew. She doesn't want to worry him. And that is where this issue ends. Next issue is issue number 30. A generic criminal called the Cat is breaking into buildings while avoiding Spider-Man, of course. He secretly breaks open a safe of some socialite. It turns out that socialite is none other than Jameson. Jameson gets really mad about this and says, I'll give a $1,000 reward to anyone who can catch this guy called the Cat. At the same time, some guy is dressed in goons, dressed in purple or robbing stuff, very organized like. Spider-Man's like, hey, you guys can't do this, I gotta beat you guys up. But since these guys are very organized, they're able to flip Spider-Man off the car and they actually get escape on him. Spider-Man then makes his casual visit to Jameson, saying basically that he better get your checkbook ready because I'm going to take that $1,000 prize reward because I'm going to capture the Cat. We then get some of the best artwork from Ditko era where Jameson imagines Spider-Man with a mouth and smiling, and I love it so much. Jameson would hate to have Spider-Man be the one to get this money reward, so he tells Foswell, you better find this guy, alright? He's like, okay, I'll do it with my underwear disguise I love so much. While walking down the street, Peter actually crosses paths with Liz Allen, who basically says, can you get Flash away from me? Because I don't want him to know where I work, because I'm done with both of you. He's like, okay, sure. And this, of course, leads to them fighting again, but Peter uses the pressure point, I guess, and makes him knock out pretty easily. Of course, he does that because he thinks he sees somebody that's a Cat, but it turns out it's just some disgruntled employee about to shoot his boss. Well, at least he defeated that guy. He's like, what a waste of time. Peter, of course, goes to see Betty, because he likes Betty, but turns out that he's got the worst news of his life. It turns out that Betty got engaged to by Ned, and he's like, oh, crap, I'm too late. Peter decides to be standoffish, because after all, Betty doesn't seem to be interested in as a guy who would want to be Spider-Man, since he wants a normal, dull life. So he gets like, choose him, I'm done with you. And then she cries, like, why won't you tell me your secret? And he's like, why couldn't I tell her my secret? But if I do, I couldn't bear to live with it. He takes out his aggression on these bank robbers here are robbing a bank for this organization, actually. These guys actually planned that for it to happen as a distraction for Spider-Man as they rob somebody else. So this guy who is the Cat here, generic name I know, decides like, what would be the best place to rob that won't get me any attention? How about this building? So he goes to rob it, but he's spotted and he decides to run away. Of course, this is to Jameson's surmise as Spider-Man's about to capture him. He's like, no, don't capture him, I don't want to give him my money. The Cat tries to run away from Spider-Man, even blowing up a water tower to distract him, but luckily there was nobody down there to get hit by it. What luck. The police eventually get involved and the Cat tries to hide with his smoke pellet, but eventually they notice a wire hanging from the chimney and realize that the Cat was hiding there and the police captured him. So while Peter wasn't able to capture him as Spider-Man, he's like, hey, I can take a photo of this to give to Jameson. Jameson is then relieved that he doesn't have to give Spider-Man any of his hard-earned money. Well, technically he does, because he doesn't realize that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but whatever. So after Peter sells more photos to Jameson, a Spider-Man ghost puts him and Betty across from each other because they can no longer be together as long as he is Spider-Man. The next issue is issue number 31. You might have thought the Cat was in charge of these purple guys, but no, he was just working on his own interests. These purple guys are still working, and they're still working for a guy named the Master Planner, saved by a helicopter heist. They use some gas with Spider-Man, which makes him a little drowsy, even if he can hold his breath longer than an average person. And when their plane crashes, they escape into an underwater base where their master lives. And because of this, they actually are able to get away from Spider-Man, as he thinks, did I hallucinate this whole thing? Well, after that was all done, Peter is too engrossed in his first day of college, or at least his college prep day, as he learns all the new things he has to do, and realizes, wow, this is going to be such a headache. I wonder if I could do this and be Spider-Man at the same time. When he comes back from this, he realizes that Aunt May fainted, and she has to go to the hospital. They're not sure what's wrong with her, but all that Peter knows is that they're going to need some money, and that he has to be there for her, that he was too busy in his own problems. He feels a little guilty. And the next day, he's a little standoffish, especially when Flash Thompson's making new friends. His new friends happen to be pretty important for later, so keep them in mind if you don't know these characters already. They happen to be Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy. Right from the get-go, Flash is like, don't look at Peter, he's a jackass, I hate him, you should, dislike him too. And they're like, yeah, we don't like him because he's a bookworm or something like that. And they pull a prank on him where his potion explodes and he feels, what? I can't believe I'm messing up, I usually am pretty good at science. And his teacher here, who, way later will become very important characters, so keep that guy in mind, even though he's not important right now, he scolds him. So all of Peter's classmates think he's a stick in the mud because he doesn't talk to anybody because he's so engrossed in his Aunt May's condition. Things have gone really bad as there's a bunch of bills piling up. Peter knows that I gotta take more photos in order for me to get some money. Of course, this is the one night that there happens to be not a single crime going on, not even one going on in the background. He ends up swinging around until dawn and falls asleep studying. Poor Peter. The person more upset about them being no crime is Jameson, who wants some news stories. Give me some news, people! Also, Betty hasn't made up her mind whether she wants to get married to Ned or not, because she's still hung up on Peter, even though Ned's more in her alley. I don't know why they even like each other to begin with. So because Jameson was yelling for some photos, Foswell is this patch disguise that he cleverly thinks is clever. He goes to some gang meetings to see if he can find some information. He finds one about some doc, but doesn't have enough information to tell the police about it. Back in college, Peter's been more standoffish and decides to not talk to this one girl who's like, maybe I should be nice to him, unlike the other people. But he's like, get on my way. That girl being Gwen Stacy gets mad. It's like, I don't like Peter at all. I'm never gonna date him, ever. So Foswell, in his disguise, decides to alert Spider-Man about his little knowledge he knows because he doesn't have enough knowledge to give to the police. But hey, maybe Spider-Man can look into it for him. And yeah, there is a crime going on at Doc about those purple guys working for the Master Planner. Spider-Man is able to fight a couple of them, but they escape again, and he forgot to take photos, so he can't even sell photos of anything. But at least this guy's made up this little clever gas mask here, so the gas won't work on him as well. And at the same time, the doctors realize that there is something wrong with Aunt May, and I heard she might be close to death. Next issue is issue number 32. The Master Planner and the man who's been in the underwater base the whole time is none other than Dr. Octopus. Of course, it makes sense for him to be him, because they've been mostly stealing a lot of chemical stuff for more experiments that he wants to do. But of course, Spider-Man is once again in his way. Also, Peter decides to go to the Daily Bugle to sell his little photos that he has. Not that they're that great. But Betty's like, please tell me your secret. And Peter's like, no, get away from me. I'm tired of you. You're in wishy-washy nonsense. And to showcase that he's so done with her, he decides to push Ned against the wall so that he can showcase that he's a bad boy now and that Betty shouldn't date him anymore. Not a great plan. Also, those photos he's going to sell Jameson, they're crap. Crap. Mega crap. And he basically says these photos suck. Before Peter can leave, Betty's like, don't try to pretend to be tough to me. I know you're not a tough guy. Please tell me what your secret is. He's like, Betty, I can't be with you. I'm sorry. Go with Ned. I don't care anymore. That's basically how it's written. Also, Peter realizes that his Aunt May is close to dying, mostly because her blood has been infected with radioactivity, meaning that, yes, that one time when he transfused blood of Aunt May is poisoning him. So basically, Peter is going to be, if Aunt May dies, Peter is going to be responsible for her death like he was for his Uncle Ben. This causes him to get really mad and break his own furniture. Not a good idea, Peter. He then gets an idea. There's one person that knows stuff about this. Dr. Connors. I wonder if I can get contact with him. Lucky luck. The good old Doc happens to be traveling to New York to work there now. Isn't that nice? As Spider-Man, he tells Doc Connors that he needs his help to find a cure, and Connors is like, you know what? I'll help you out, Spider-Man, since you helped me out when I was the Lizard. I just need a little bit of money to do it. So Spider-Man has to sell his science equipment for money in order to get the cash he needs to save his aunt's life. As Spider-Man and Connors does some science, Connors reveals the last ingredient they need is a very expensive chemical that he specially ordered. And at the same time, Dr. Octopus also wants the same chemical for his experiment, so he tells his goons to steal it. To which they do. This makes Spider-Man go on a rampage. He kidnaps Foswell to see if he can get information out of him. And while he doesn't get information from him, he goes to beat up a bunch of criminals in a fast pace in order to say, where is the Master Planner? I need to find him. Spider-Man is done taking crap from these guys. He rips off stairwells and tosses cars aside, basically scaring the whole underground criminal organization. After searching and searching, Spider-Man finds Master Planner goons, and he's ready to beat them all up. Instead of fighting them all, he discovers they have a little passageway to the underground. And after he's under the river, Spider-Man finds the cure that he's looking for, but it's spotlighted, and that's where he comes in contact with Dr. Octopus, his old nemesis. But Doc Ock is a little surprised, since usually Spider-Man is not as strong as he is here, because Spider-Man just not taking any craps here. He needs to save Aunt May's life. It's on the borderline. He destroys pillars underneath. He tangles up Dr. Octopus's tentacles. He starts destroying the foundation of this base, and it starts to crumble apart. All of a sudden, the foundation starts to crumble in on itself, and it falls on top of Spider-Man. Dr. Octopus basically leaves Spider-Man to his own doom, as more stuff starts to fall on top of him, including this giant piece of steel, which is too much for him to carry, as water begins to soaking in from the top since they are under the river. Spider-Man tries to pull the thing up, but it's so tough that he can't even do it. With Aunt May getting closer to going into a coma, and Dr. Connors not able to finish the potion without the chemical, and Dr. Planner's minions, the Master Planner's minions waiting for Spider-Man on the outside if he does escape. It looks like this is the end for Spider-Man, as he has finally failed. The next issue is issue number 33. Well, it all seems lost for Spider-Man as he's stuck on this giant piece of steel. Water's coming down on him. He's like, I can't believe I failed again. The idea of Aunt May reminds him of his Uncle Ben and how he failed his uncle by not catching that criminal. And as a bunch of emotion comes back to him, he's like, no, I can't let another one of my relatives die because of my stubbornness. And with all his might, he starts to push and push farther than he's ever done before. Even though his muscles are straining, his urge to get out and save his aunt is stronger than any amount of weight could be on top of him right now. The machinery is right above him. It is really a lot of weight, but he pushes it even further. He has to get out of here. In a fun final toss, he exerts his full amount of strength as the steel column is finally tossed above him. Even though Spider-Man's out, the whole foundation is about to cave in as his body aches from all that pressure he had to put in order to lift that thing up. He grabs the serum and is about to leave as the whole thing starts to flood with water as it pushes him into the passage. Luckily, Spider-Man's able to swim through it and back into air. Of course, he's in for a surprise when those Master Planner goons are ready for a fight. But Spider-Man says, I've got a job to do, and nobody, nothing, no power on earth is going to stop me while I still live. And he lets them beat him up for a while. You see, because they're so weak, it's actually easier to just wait and let his strength come back to him from all that strain he had to do earlier, and just wait for that to build up, and rather than fight them back right now, since, there's a little love taps him, because he's got that spider strength. After a while, it does get pretty tough on him, as he tries to fight them off. And he starts swinging and swinging around him, beating up every opponent he sees, until he realizes, oh, they're all gone. Well, whew. And finally, after all that, he's able to get the cure to Dr. Connors, and they're able to make a thing that can cure Aunt May. Spider-Man tests on his blood before he actually goes to give it to her, since, his blood's radioactivity. And, of course, it ends up working. And the only way to see if it fully works is to give it to her. Dr. Connors tells the doctors about his new serum that Spider-Man's delivering, and he delivers it. And the doctor's like, why are you doing this, Spider-Man? He just says, I'm just doing it to prove that I'm not as bad as everyone says I am. Even though really he's just doing it because he wants to save his aunt. They don't know that. And after that's all done, Peter's like, hey, might as well get some photos of this whole ordeal after all. This is the toughest battle I ever had to go through. And as Spider-Man, he takes some photos as the Master Planner goons are all arrested and all identified as former criminals. Betty starts to get upset when Peter comes to Daily Bugle, all bruises from, doing that giant fight back there, and she starts to cry like a little bimbo. And like always, she runs away. But Peter only cares about is giving his photos to Jameson. But because he's got a little chip on his shoulder right now, he's like, Jameson, you can't have these photos until you give me top dollar for them. And he's like, you're stealing from me, Peter. And in his thoughts, he's like, they're actually worth twice as much as he wants, but whatever. As we all know, Jameson isn't the nicest guy in the world. Peter makes it back to the hospital where he discovers that the cures worked. He can finally rest easy, knowing that he didn't let his Aunt May down. And after the doctor tells him that he should probably get some rest because he looks like crap, he's like, you know what? I think I will be able to do that now, as he walks away back to get some much needed rest. Next issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 34. We cut to Kraven the Hunter, who's back in his home country, saying that he was able to capture Spider-Man and put his head on his mantle, and he must get revenge. In order to see if he's still as strong as he thinks he is, he practices fighting a lion whose name is Simba. I should know that. He sneaks his way back into New York, and he's going to find Spider-Man one way or the other and prove that he is the superior. Also, Spider-Man reveals that he is Peter Parker, and Betty Brant is scared! Just kidding, it was only just a dream. Luckily for Peter, Aunt May is recovering after the serum that Dr. Connors made, is finally getting her system. At college, all the guys try to hit Gwen Stacy because she's hot, but she's like, nah. And Peter also tries to, but everyone else says, you're a snob, you stood us up. He's like, uh-oh, I guess I did. Though Gwen Stacy's always thinking about him for some reason, even if she doesn't like him. Oh, maybe she does, I don't know. She cannot make her up her mind. It's a big problem. Back in New York, Kraven finds Chameleon's old apartment and decides to make a new plan to capture Spider-Man. After this, Spider-Man attacks Jameson at his taxi stop. What's Spider-Man doing? Why is he fighting him? See, that wasn't Spider-Man, that was Kraven. I wonder if he'll ever disguise himself as Spider-Man ever again. Wink, wink. So for a while, Kraven harasses Jameson as Spider-Man, makes his image look bad, and makes Spider-Man come after him. But Jameson doesn't care because even though he's getting harassed, he's like, hey, I'm selling papers! So Peter obviously goes out and finds the fake Spider-Man. And the people see him, saying, we need to beat up Spider-Man, he's been here too long, he's a criminal. Of course, Kraven reveals that the other Spider-Man was him, and he's ready to showcase that to Spider-Man that he is the master. He brings Spider-Man to an abandoned warehouse area to fight. The fight is interrupted when those guys from outside are trying to fight Spider-Man for some reason. I know why they want to do it, but will they beat him? No, they don't. In fact, more and more of those guys keep coming and coming. But even Kraven doesn't want to do this. After all, this is his hunt alone. But after fighting it out a bit and spewing one-liners, Spider-Man's able to defeat Kraven. And he hands him over to the police, I guess as well as those goons, or I guess maybe just tied up. I'm not sure if they're criminals or not. Who knows? So Spider-Man's taking a picture once again. Besides, I can't, because if I go to the Bugle, I'll see Betty, and I don't want to see her anymore. But it turns out at the Bugle, Betty's not even working there anymore, as she's been replaced by a different secretary. Peter, once again, is somber in his house, thinking about Betty, and why they can never be together, because she would never even accept him if she knew that he was Spider-Man. The next issue is the Amazing Spider-Man number 35. Remember Raxon? Well, he's out of prison pretty quickly. He's had good behavior, and since it's a first-time offense, he gets out easy. Though he's not going on the straight and narrow path. He's like, I'm gonna rob more stuff, but I'm gonna wait and bite it out. Many days later, he disguised himself as some aristocrat trying to buy some jewels. But of course, he's trying to rob them. Though before he can really get anything, Spider-Man shows up on the scene and beats the snot out of him. So he pushes the teller away and runs away. This makes Molten Man very mad, as he has to get rid of his old disguise and make a new one. Of course, I guess he got them for Chameleon. I'm not sure how he was able to make a face mask that look like realistic, but whatever. Even though Spider-Man doesn't know that it's a Molten Man, he puts two and two together since that guy was able to do certain things that, like the other guy. He's like, you know what? That guy must have been the Molten Man. And I bet he's back to his old ways. So Spider-Man spies on the Molten Man and leaves his handy-dandy spider tracker to make sure that he is up to no good. He tracks him for a while with the Molten Man spotting his time, but he didn't buy his time too much because Spider-Man sees him changing disguises. The Molten Man tries to rob stuff, but it's not very good when you have golden hands. I mean, who else would it be? He and Spider-Man get into a fist fight. Molten Man tries to run away, but it's no use when Spider-Man's on your tail. Spider-Man finds some rope here and is like, I'm gonna tie you up, Molten Man, so that's what stopped you last time. Molten Man's like, no you won't. And Spider-Man's like, yeah, I will. So Molten Man is defeated. I guess he really should have been stuck to the straight path. His plan did not work. Also, since Spider-Man got pictures of him changing costume, he's able to showcase that Molten Man has been committing crimes, even though he wasn't supposed to be doing that. Peter is once again in the Daily Bugle to sell his new photos of the Molten Man to Jameson, where he discovers that Betty is not working there anymore, and a new receptionist is in her place. You see, Betty gave up on Peter, I guess, because she gives him a photo of him that he signed, apparently. I'm not sure why he signed a picture of himself to her, but she doesn't want it anymore. To Betty, forever, Peter, forever. I wonder when I wrote that. Must have been a lifetime ago. And that is when Peter finally gives up on Betty, realizing that they really didn't have any chance to survive in this cruel world. The next issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 36. A man named Norton G. Fester finds a meteor, and he thinks, wow, I can do amazing stuff with this. Unfortunately for him, he failed science, so he doesn't know how to do that. So instead of donating this to someplace, Meteor or something like that, he decides to ask for money for him to research it on himself, but both the scientist and the bank denies him because, well, he has nothing to go on. Just because I flunked science in school doesn't mean I can't discover the secret of the universe. I have as much chance as anyone else. Well, lucky for him, he was wrong. Maybe he was right, because he decided just to hammer into the meteor, which spewed gas at him. But this gas is not any gas, it's a comic book gas, meaning that he has some new superpowers, that being that he's strong and he can jump a little higher. The basic stuff. It seems that Norton here has found some new powers, so what can he do to help benefit mankind? Does he seem to want to do that? Well, let's see if he does that. Back in good old Empire State University, Peter is having trouble getting along with classmates because they all think he's a snob. And, he should have paid attention better. He's always in his head. This one girl here, named Sally, tries to approach him, and they have a little cordial conversation, but he decides to deny something because she reminds him of Betty. And Betty Brant is no good, because I don't want to be in that type of relationship again, so he basically acts kind of mean. And everyone's like, see, I told you he was rude. Meanwhile, this new guy called the Looter is breaking in the bank and stealing money. And surprise, it turned out to be Fester here, our good old friend Fester, who I guess didn't really care about making his discovery, just wanted some money. He's been using the gas from the meteor to make himself strong, but uh-oh, it's running out of gas. He's got to steal another meteor, which apparently he knows where one is. A space exhibit. Peter and Gwen, not together, have also gone to this big exhibit. For some reason, Gwen really wants to see Peter, even though he never really approached her, and the one time he did, she rejected him. Peter's examining this amazing piece of science. Gwen's mad because she's not paying attention to me, despite the fact that she didn't say anything to him. Whatever. The looter breaks in, and Spider-Man, or Peter in this case, runs away so he can get into his Spider-Man garb. And Gwen thinks he's even more of a coward. What a loser. But little does she know that he's becoming Spider-Man to fight this costume creep. Of course, they have a little tussle, as the looter decides to break some science equipment. This makes Peter mad because, he loves science and doesn't want scientific equipment to get destroyed. So the looter, despite not being a scientist, has a dazzle gun, which confuses everybody, and he runs away. Decides to go after the meteorite some other day. Yeah, he turns back to Spider-Man and Peter, not Spider-Man, because he's like, I gotta see this exhibit, it's pretty neat. He sees Gwen there, says, hello, how's it going? And she's like, I don't like you because you're a coward. It's like, well, geez Louise, what did I do? But even though Gwen thinks he's a wimp, she keeps thinking that he's manly looking. How could he be a coward? And she's like, how can anyone so pretty be such a nut? When Norman G. Fester here goes to the exhibit later on, just examine the place and realizes there's guards everywhere. He's like, wow, this is going to be a lot tougher than I think. Maybe I'll do it at night. At night, Spider-Man also assumes that the looter will probably be back for what he's looking for and decides to hang out and see if he comes. And of course he comes to try to steal the meteor. And he does, but this time, Looter's got a magic balloon. Well, not a magic balloon, it's just a balloon that floats. Again, for someone who doesn't know science, he sure has some scientific equipment. Spider-Man joins him for his balloon ride and beats him up with one hand. Despite his quote-unquote super strength, the Looter is not much of a match for Spider-Man, who, like I said, is able to beat him one-handed, basically. So Spider-Man attacks the guy and says, no wonder he wore a mask, he wouldn't cop any beauty prizes, making fun of good old Fester here. He sends Fester down on his balloon ride, and gives a little signal to the police that this guy needs to be arrested. The next issue is issue number 37. A scientist named Dr. Strum is finally getting released from prison. And Jameson's trusty reporter, Foswell, is there to see what's going on to get some news scoop. But right behind him, someone's pointing a gun at him. But look at Foswell, Spider-Man's right behind him and decides to beat the guy up and asks him, what are you doing here, punk? Turns out this guy's not even working for the professor, he just wants to work for him. So Spider-Man puts on his hat for some reason and webs him to the car. Yeah, Spider-Man wears a hat for 2 panels only and then doesn't wear it anymore. I'm not sure why he has a hat on. The police are chasing after him because his car was stolen. Spider-Man's like, yeah, I'm going to ditch you because I don't be arrested. At the Daily Bugle, it turns out that Jameson has another receptionist because they keep quitting on him because he's such a mean old grump. Peter's also here, not for selling photos or seeing Betty, because he's over Betty, because Jameson didn't give him his paycheck for the last photos he sold him, and Jameson could not care less. He's too busy with new reports, and in fact his secretaries aren't as satisfactory as Betty is. So Foswell actually does come back, and he has some little scoop on Dr. Strum, or Professor Strum, whatever you like to call him. Apparently he's playing revenge on someone who put him in prison all those years ago, which we do not know yet. Peter thinks it's a good idea to put a spider tracker back in Foswell's hat because he always seems to know where the crime is. In fact, he seems pretty good at fighting crime. So Peter tries to be nice to Gwen Stacy, but she gives him the cold shoulder, and then Peter says something very snarky. Flash decides to play White Knight, but Peter's like, I'll leave you two alone, I don't really care anymore. Yeah, these classmates just really hate Peter, and it's really not justified at all. Sorry, kids. So Professor Strum sends out this green thing, a robot he calls it, to go out and take revenge on a certain somebody. The robot is destroying an electronics plant with every bit of its strength. Though this isn't the best idea because there's a fire outside the building and Spider-Man sees it and swoops in to save the day. Though the weird green blob robot is a kind of a tassel because of how it grabs and grips. Though eventually Spider-Man's able to toss it and throw it in the fire. He jumps out of the building, and of course people blame him for causing the fire because of his bad luck. Even though that green robot got destroyed, it's okay because Professor Strom's already working on a new robot to do his bidding. And who owned that plant the robot was destroying? Why, none other than Norman Osborn, Father Harry Osborn. He has a little bit of secrets that he's not willing to let anyone know, and tries to put this stuff under the rug. It turns out that Norman's also friends with Jameson because they go to the same rich guys club. And Jameson's like, I'll write papers about your situation. He's like, I guess you will, because I'm worried about my things getting destroyed. So the professor, using his little telekinesis technique to control his robots, sends his new robot out to defeat the one that he hates the most. Spider-Man's been tracking this guy named Patch, who doesn't know as Foswell, who is also on the lead of Professor Strom, but one of his goons behind him. But at the same time, their robot goes out. So Spider-Man's like, what should I do? Should I save the patch guy or should I go after the robot? Spidey's like, hey, I got this amazing spider tracker. I'll throw it on the robot's butt and then I'll save Patch here. So Spider-Man saves Patch, who's stuck in this room, and he's like, I'll come back for you. I gotta beat that robot before it does any more damage. Professor Strom's new robot crashes into the office of Norman Osborn, threatening to destroy everything that he holds value for ruining his life. Because Spider-Man was tracking the robot, he's able to find where it is and fight the robot for Norman, but Norman isn't excited about that at all. In fact, he's blaming Spider-Man for getting in his way, for stopping a plan that he set up to get rid of Strom forever. Whatever that could be. While dodging the robot's beam, Spider-Man gets knocked out by a hit from Norman? Some random guy's able to knock out Spider-Man? That seems kinda odd. As a matter of fact, Norman sees Marston and Spider-Man getting taken out over the robot as he runs away. Since Norman got away, the robot's going back to its headquarters, and that's where Spider-Man decides to follow it. Strom is using the robot against Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's like, nope. So now that Professor Strom is defeated, he's like, okay, I'll tell you a secret that you probably need to know before I get arrested. Before he can do that, somebody holding a gun shoots him. Professor Strom dies. Spider-Man jumps after who shot the shot, but when he goes up there, he finds no trace of anything. How did he get up there in the first place? There was no rope, no ladder, no sound of a helicopter, Spider-Man thinks to himself, meaning that however he got up there, he must be using some other type of device. So Spider-Man leaves as there's nothing left for him to do here. Later, we get to see that Norman was the one who killed Strom with his gun, thinking that he has to get rid of Spider-Man once and for all. Peter is baffled by how the person was able to get away so quickly and who the identity of that person must be, as the kids make fun of them for ignoring them again. The last issue is Amazing Spider-Man number 38. There once was a guy named Joe Smith. He had an agent and he wanted to be in a professional rank, but he sucked at boxing and he sucked at wrestling. But you know what? His agent believes in little Joe here and decides to give him a little part in a little movie filming in New York, where he gets to play as a monster guy who beats up a bunch of little equipment. Joe is pretty sad. Everyone makes fun of him for being weak and lame, and now he's forced to do a lame movie where he beats up cardboard props. Though at that very moment, one of the props knocks out a light which hits some chemicals nearby, there were some reason there, and they hit Joe and sting him all around. Of course, the film director doesn't care because that was a great scene. After that, we see Peter going to the Daily Beagle, seeing that once again a new secretary is quitting the job. Peter came here to see if he can get his paycheck, but since Jameson's in a bad mood, he decides just to leave and let things be bygones. He does find Ned Leeds here. Ned asks, where's Betty? And Peter's like, I was going to ask you the same thing. They don't really like each other because they wanted the same girl, but Peter doesn't really care anymore. But Ned's like, you really should care. But he's like, nope, I don't care. How can you be so cold, so uncaring? Does Betty mean nothing to you? Aw, shut up! And for one last time, Peter thinks about Betty. And what if he told her that he was Spider-Man? But he's like, it's late for that, and Leeds is probably better for her anyway. After all, there's a lot of responsibility with being Spider-Man. Back to Joe, here in his little film set fiasco. He has a time to fight some stuntmen in the movie scene. But because of those chemicals, they're messing with his head, and he gets pretty angry when he's fighting. And the more angry he gets, the crazier and powerful he becomes. In fact, he kind of loses control and beats up everything. Destroys a car. And Peter, who's lost in thought thinking about his old past, gets in the shuffle of Joe and his Rampage. He quickly transforms into Spider-Man and tries to quip against Joe here. I don't know who you are, sir, but you've got a definite manifestation of deep-rooted antisocial fixation. So usually the villains quip against Spider-Man, but because Joe here really isn't a villain, he just has his mind messed up right now, Spider-Man's having quite a bit of trouble fighting him because he can't quip against him. Actually, I never met a Moz costume scraper before. Usually they start off by saying, nobody can defeat Purple Panty Waste. Are you fool? Don't you realize your chance against the human windshield wiper? Eventually, Joe's head starts clearing, and his manager helps him and tells him to go this way. After that, we see Norman Osborn drop his son off at school. What a nice guy. Well, not really, because he's actually putting a disguise on. And why is he doing that? Well, he speaks to certain people and says there is a 20,000 bounty on Spider-Man's head. The first one to kill him gets the 20,000. Jeez, that's a lot of money. There's also a protest going on at the college, but it really doesn't mean anything right now. Peter's like, I don't want to be involved. And they make fun of him again. But Gwen's like, maybe he's not that bad. I kind of like him. He's kind of handsome. Meanwhile, Joe's brought back to his house, but the chemicals are messing with his head. he gets wiped out and he knocks himself out, basically, from all that energy from wasted fighting Spider-Man. The criminals start to gang up on Spider-Man, but they're now a match for him. They only have superpowers. What makes them think they can beat Spider-Man? But then again, you do crazy things for $20,000. Joe actually wakes up, but his mind is still messed up, and he starts to get angry. He thinks about how much of a failure he is, and punches a hole straight in the wall. And the first thought he gets is, all the people made fun of him, I'll prove that I'm actually very strong. So Joe goes back to the gym where all the people made fun of him. They say, Joe, you're a loser. But then Joe starts to beat them all up. Spider-Man comes in and tries to stop the fight. However, everyone starts to beat up on Spider-Man because they want the $20,000 reward. So Spider-Man beats everyone up, and after a few punches to the face, Joe finally loses all his hallucinations and finally is back to normal. But he's gonna get arrested even though he's normal now. But maybe he's not. His manager comes in with good. You see, the movie studio liked his little stunt he did so much that they're gonna hire him to be a full-time actor. And this makes Joe shed a single tear. And now all the people who beat up on him and made fun of him now are congratulating Joe, and now they want to be his buddy. And Spider-Man's like, well, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. But there's more people trying to get that bounty on Spider-Man's head, and it's like, geez Louise, what are you guys doing here? You think you really take on me? And spoiler alert, they lose. Big deal. So they win another fight. And as usual, I went up with nothing to show for it. Even a Blamstar window dummy sits there and grins at me. Go on, smirk. Sit there with a dumb-looking smile on your lipless pan. The more I look at him, the more he reminds me of Ned Leeds. You know why I hate you, Leeds? Because you have the right to propose to Betty. The shadow of Spider-Man isn't standing between you. Wah, wah. We end this issue in this era with Peter going home to Aunt May. Aunt May wants to show him Mary Jane, but Mary Jane just left in the nick of time. And that's it. Peter doesn't know, but something new is about to come around the corner. And that is the end of issue 38. And the last issue of Spider-Man that Steve Ditko plotted and written and drew. That's the end of this part of the video. However, I'm going to do a little retrospective on my opinions and thoughts and behind the scenes and stuff of Amazing Spider-Man. So, if you enjoy that, here we go. Well, first off, we're talking about that this issue right here, which really wasn't that interesting, is the last issue that Steve Ditko ever plotted and drew. And that is why it's the end here. But part of this storyline that started in the last issue is going to have a conclusion in the next stuff, basically. You see, there's a lot of conflicting reasons why Steve Ditko left. One of the biggest one is with the character of Norman Osborn. You see, Norman Osborn was supposed to be a generic guy to Steve Ditko. However, Stan Lee, he wanted him to be the Green Goblin, which is why Lee writes stuff like how he leaves no traces of stuff, while Ditko plots things that would make it seem like he wouldn't be, but at the same time, Lee writes it like he could be. They couldn't make up their mind, and so by the next issue, 39, which will reveal Norman Osborn's true identity, Steve Ditko decides to leave and do his own thing. And that's really what he did afterwards. Steve Ditko is a great artist. After all, he created one of the most iconic costumes of all time in Spider-Man himself. He co-created most of all Spider-Man's supervillains. And his plotting skills is great. While he can create a weird face once in a while, some of his female and male faces look very similar. But at the end of the day, he's a great comic book artist. And he will be missed. This volume is also the end of Peter Parker and Betty Brant's love story. It's one that's very interesting because it's really not that great. A lot of comic book heroes will meet their love interest from the very first start. Superman always had Lois Lane. Iron Man always had Pepper Potts, from what I believe. Bruce Banner always had Betty Brant, sorry. What was her name? Betty Ross, sorry. Two Bettys. And so on and so forth. And Spider-Man started off with Betty Brant, his first girlfriend. And unfortunately for us, me personally, I never thought they were that great of a couple. And I'm kind of glad they got over with. One, they kind of went through circles. It seemed like it all went downhill when Spider-Man was at the time who showed up when Bennett Brant died. And at that point, the relationship kind of became stagnant. And she always would cry and whine. It's also Stan Lee's not that great writing of Peter being kind of sexist in a way. He says things like, those females. Sure, he's a hormonal teenager, but it always comes off kind of like, eh. And the fact that they really just don't have a problem with talking, because there's a lot of scenes where they just don't showcase that stuff. And yeah, it really wasn't that developed, unfortunately. Despite the fact there's a lot of scenes there's a lot of repetition, and overall, Betty is just not that interesting of a character. And really, they didn't really have much to go off of. Like I said, if Peter was never confident enough to tell her that he was Spider-Man, ever, it really showcased that really they were never really meant to be. And so ends the Betty Brant arc. Another thing I want to talk about this era, which will continue even when Steve Ditko isn't the illustrator, is that the fight scenes. They aren't bad. As you see this page here, later on, we'll have stuff like this where just fight after fight, and it's pretty interesting. Though, unfortunately, this is one of my problems with Stan Lee, is that he didn't really write this stuff. If you don't know how, he used the Marvel method. Basically, here's the idea, Spider-Man fights the Molten Man, and Jameson appears. That'll be the idea. See, Ditko has to bake his own story up based off that information, which is what the plotter part comes from, and then illustrate it. And then Stan Lee will come back and write for it. Meaning that a lot of times the fight scenes, which flow naturally by themselves, will have a lot of dialogue that makes them go on for very long. Most of the time, just Spider-Man describing what he's doing, or "Wow, I can't believe he did that," or "You'll never stop me here." "Wait, did you do that?" "Oh, yes, he did." It's probably the worst aspect of these comics, and I didn't want to miss any dialogue options, but sometimes there'll be great wisecracks in between them, which is what Spider-Man's known for. But a lot of times it's just there because Stan Lee wants to showcase that he did more than just give the idea for the comic. And they do mess up the flow of fighting, especially when these scenes are a lot more powerful and easier to follow than just Spider-Man punching a guy for one panel and talking about how much that punch hurt his fist. It's interesting, but it goes on and on for too long, at least in my opinion. The fight scenes are good, but a reread, I do recommend not reading the dialogue during fight scenes like this, and you'll have a much better time. One of the things you'll notice in the early comics is how much Daily Bugle stuff there is. Peter's always stuffing in the Daily Bugle, even if it makes no sense. A lot of times there's great stuff in here. Jameson is a really funny character. He's the best written character when it comes to jokes material, even though he is very stagnant. It does get tiring after a while, him writing the same article. Spider-Man's bad. Oh, Spider-Man captured these guys. Oh no, I'm ruined. I said he did something bad, but he didn't. I would like it was better on early, the first issue of Spider-Man, #1. Jameson twisted an act that Spider-Man did to make him look like a villain. And I wish he would do that more often, rather than saying Spider-Man is Electro. Stuff like that just, it's funny, but the fact he kept doing it over and over again, I feel like his motivation should be a lot better. Like, he should not like costume characters at all, in a way. A lot of future writers would do that in future adaptations. But right here, he's kind of just a meanie. Even if he does something that's noble, he'll then take credit for something that he really doesn't deserve. And gets away with a lot of stuff. It's okay. Like I said, it is funny. There's always something funny. Like, oh, the Scorpion attacks him, and he pretends like, yeah, I was a hero here. That's funny. I love that. Him managing his... He is kind of a villain in this early arcs. But unlike later versions, will try to give him some redeeming qualities. Here, he doesn't really have any. In fact, even when Spider-Man desperately needs money, and he has one over Jameson, Jameson always thinks in his head, they're worth more than he's actually offering me. So he's a character that's fun to read, but at the same time, very stagnant. The fact that he has the same writing style over and over again. And near the end of Ditko's run, it seems like they kind of realize that as they focus less on him and just showcase him being rude to everybody. And it makes sense why his employees didn't like him. But overall, there's great stuff with this character. I just wish they did more interesting, Stan Lee in particular, wrote more interesting things we're going to do. Twisted Spider-Man's actions more. Like, the police should have... He should be more like, the police could have doing this. Why is Spider-Man getting in the way? More than, Spider-Man is evil. Oh, crap, he's actually not. Oh, no, not again. He does it a little bit too much. That's all I'm saying for this part. This volume is noteworthy for introducing new characters and finally making Peter Parker graduate from high school and go into college. Now, unfortunately, we don't see a lot of this. In fact, there's only like little parts in between it, and then quickly it gets swapped up to be here's Spider-Man fighting somebody and multiple panels of that, which feels more like a necessity rather than anything else, because a lot of times a lot of the fight scenes are pretty forced, unfortunately. The college life isn't that interesting because, once again, instead of doing something new with it, he starts off with the same as high school. No one likes him. This time, he has another bully in Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy, whose inner thoughts make no sense at this point. She likes and hates him at the same time, which makes no sense. Also, the fact that barely anybody cuts him slack, even early on, it doesn't really work, in my opinion. Maybe back in the 60s it would have worked, but for me, him just... It would have been obvious that he was going through something. The fact that they say, "Oh, he's a stuck and stick in the mud," it's just something that didn't really work for me. It makes these characters not likable, despite the fact that later on, as we discover, these characters will wildly change. Because a lot of people will be surprised to hear that yes, Harry Osborn was not his Peter's friend. In fact, they start off as enemies. It's very odd since it usually goes the other way around. They start off as friends and then enemies through complications in their life. Also, the fact that Harry's father, Norman Osborn, is introduced so late, and when we finally, which would have been better to have a twist reveal that he was Green Goblin if you knew the character a lot later. Spoiler alert, he's Green Goblin, but this part's not me doing the retrospect. This is me talking about elements of this early comic, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I do have a little bit of problems. I have a lot of problems at the end of this arc. I thought it had some great stuff in this volume, but at the same time, it had some issues. Gwen Stacy's a character who's pretty awful. Like, she just seems like someone who just cares only... It has very vain and really only cares about what guy likes her. Peter Parker doesn't... If you have interest in her, it's like, oh, how dare he? And then she's like, why is he not? And then it doesn't really work. Flash Thompson's his usual self. I guess that makes sense. But Harry is also just seems like a nitwit. And yeah, that's what I can say about this part. I wish they were written better. But luckily, this was about to change in the next volume. So I'm happy about that. This volume definitely peaked with If This Be My Destiny arc, a 3-issue miniseries where Spider-Man has to fight with himself in order to beat something. And this time, his greatest challenge isn't beating up a villain. It's being able to carry up a giant amount of weight on his shoulders. Something that I wish was more like the rest of the comics. I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Ditko was the one who came up with this idea, and then Stan Lee wrote the dialogue afterwards, because, yeah, the dialogue isn't the best, even in these scenes. And Stan Lee has great dialogue sometimes, but other times it feels like it's unnecessary padding, which is really a shame for such a great comic, at least in my opinion. But This Be My Destiny is definitely the highlight of this story, and after this, most of the other comics feel like filler until we get to the main stuff in between the next volume, which has a lot of stuff going on. This volume, surprisingly, has less villain introductions than the previous one. The previous one had a crap ton of villains. This time, we have less, which is fine, but the fact that we get characters like Looter or Professor Strom or Joe instead of characters like Electro. Lizard kind of appears, so I guess I won't count him. Kraven does too. Little stuff from Mysterio, Electro, and no Vulture either, really. Only one episode for Kraven, but yeah, there's a lot of missing characters, at least in that regard. But yeah, we do get introduced to us, especially near the end, where they kept popping, like in 4 comics in a row, we get characters who are not going to be important, or they die in their first appearance, where they're not even that interesting. Where's the Living Brain? Bring back... Just kidding, they actually do bring the Living Brain later. But yeah, we just mentioned Scorpion. He's, other than the Molten Man, who was kind of a lame introduction, he kind of sucks. No offense. Maybe he'll get better. We'll see. But I haven't heard anybody talk about his later stories, so probably not. Scorpion is one of my favorite villains. I love his introduction. It's one of the best stories written in the Steve Ditko Lee arc. The idea of Spider-Man being beat by this guy time and time again in one issue, but keep coming back again and again. He really feels like a very fearsome villain, and his power alone. Though I do wish he was written better in the second issue, which wasn't as good as the first appearance. This volume started off great, and got a little worse near the end. This won't be a problem for later on, but hey, this is going to be NMI talking about how I feel about these comics. I do like them quite a bit, but I do admit there's a lot of problems near the end. A lot of them which we hope can be redeemed. Will Stan Lee write better? And will the new artist, Jonah Romita Sr., do better? We'll see. I'll leave you this panel from issue 18, the one that started it off, which really should have been in the last issue, if you ask me, because I think this is one of the best pages of Spider-Man, and I love issue 18. So, that is Spider-Man, and you know what? The great thing about these comics is that even though Spider-Man can get beat down, he'll always come back up again, even through some poorly chosen dialogue. So next time, we're going to join a new plotter and illustrator, Jonah Romita Sr. and Stan Lee, in the new episode, Spider-Man Comic History, Episode 3, Spider-Man No More. See you then, whenever that gets uploaded. It takes a while for me to do this, so if you like, follow me on Patreon, give me a subscription, and give me a like. I might do more comic book stuff in the future. So if you like this, let me know.